Hey, my name's Rusty Corhonen and I got a funny one for you. A friend of mine got married in May and I was best man in his wedding, and I tried to date his maid of honor, but she wouldn't go out with me because I was too short. Fair enough. So my friend's wife, she met a girl that she really liked and thought that we would be a perfect couple. I wasn't really looking for a relationship at the time. She said, I'm gonna set something up. I said, oh, all right, whatever. Well, my friend's birthday is in August. So his wife called me up and said she was gonna have a birthday party for him, and they lived on the other side of the state, a good 2 hours away. I said, sure, I'll come. Sounds great. It was a Friday night. Well, that Friday, I took the real estate exam. I studied all night for it. I was exhausted, and my sister was all up in arms because nobody was around and she had to pack for school. And well, my parents' anniversary weekend was that weekend, so they were out of town. Kind of felt sorry for my sister, so I thought, you know what, we're just gonna go to a movie. So I called my friend and said, hey, listen, I can't make it. I'm pretty tired from taking this exam, and I really don't feel like driving all the way. Can we hook up for a beer or something next week? And he said, yeah, no problem. So I didn't go. A couple weeks later, another really good friend of mine called me up and said, hey, we're going out Labor Day weekend, and we're going sailing on your dad's boat, so get a date. I said, well, okay. So I called everybody I knew. My sister was out of town. She went back to school. I called a whole bunch of friends. They couldn't make it. So I called my friend on the other side of the state. He and I used to sail a lot together. And I said, hey, you guys want to come sailing on Labor Day weekend? He said, that would be great, absolutely. I said, well, I remember your wife telling me about this girl that she met that she thought we would make a good couple. Can you see if she can make it? And my friend said, well, I don't know if she's gonna come because you stood her up the last time. And I said, what? I don't remember you setting up a date. He said, oh, my wife didn't tell you. She invited this girl to my birthday. You kind of no-showed. I said, well, had I known she was gonna be there, I probably would have made it. So he said, I'll call our friends who know her and we'll see. So he called me up about an hour later and says, well, we can make it and our friends can make it, but I don't think the girl's gonna come. I said, all right. So I got 3 couples now, and I have to be there. It's my parents' boat, right? So I called a buddy of mine, and it just so happened that year Michigan opened an early goose hunt for lower parts of Michigan. Where we kept the boat just happened to be just about a half hour from there. So I called my buddy and said, hey, you want to go goose hunt? And he says, yeah. So we stayed up pretty late talking about hunting and fishing and drank a little too many Kalias. So we didn't get up till like 10 o'clock, and it was too late to go because these people were coming sometime after noon. So I said, hey, I have to get some groceries. You want to come? And he said, sure. On the way to the grocery store, my friend said, well, if this girl doesn't show up, I'll go with you. You know, so at least you don't have to be like the fifth wheel. I said, that would be great. Well, it turns out the girl did show up. We had a great time that day, and sparks kind of flew, and I was content it was love at first sight, or at least the closest thing I've ever experienced. We wound up getting married just a couple years later. After that weekend, we had seen each other every weekend, and sometime in, I think it was late September, I had to go up north for something. I finished up the work I needed to do and decided, you know what? On Sunday, I'm gonna head near Detroit. I've never been there. I stopped at a Denny's, looked in the phone book because she said she was gonna be at her parents' house. She mentioned her dad's name, and okay, here we go. There's 2 numbers. First number, didn't know who I was talking about. Second number, I called and this guy answers, and I said, hey, is Renee there? He said, yeah, she's here. I said, oh, great. Can you tell me how I get there? I don't have a map of the area. And he said, oh, no problem. And I told him who I was, and he said, oh, I've heard all about you. I'd love to meet you. He gave me directions, and I showed up there, and this guy answers the door and says, oh, she just left. She went to my aunt and uncle's place. Like, great, okay, how do I get there? So he gave me directions. We probably spent 20 minutes going through it, making sure I wouldn't get lost. So I went to the aunt and uncle's place. The aunt answers the door. I introduced myself. Sorry, they're not here. They went to this pizza place down the road. Can you tell me how to get there? I should have bought a map, now that I look back. She was there with her 2 cousins, and each of her cousins had a date. So I show up at the restaurant, and I tap her on the shoulder. She's the 5th wheel, right? So turns around and looks at me, and her face is blank. She doesn't recognize me. Well, I'm not supposed to be there. These 2 guys kind of puff out their chests a little bit, you know. They look at me like, what are you doing here? She goes, oh my gosh, how are you? And she stood up and gave me a big hug, and the girls went to the bathroom. And so I sit down with these two guys. Now, one of them is her cousin, and he had brought a date, and the other is her cousin's boyfriend. Tough looking dude. I don't think I would want to mess with him. I'm really feeling a little uncomfortable because of the silence, and how does Rusty break the ice? I said, hey, I heard a great joke. The DNR bred a coho, a walleye, and a muskie to get the best fighting, best tasting fish on the planet. They named it the Kowalski. They just have to teach it how to swim. These guys didn't crack a smile. They were deadpan. Absolutely no reaction whatsoever. And Johnny puts a cigarette in his mouth, takes out his driver's license, and he flicks it at me like a playing card. It hits me in the chest. I look at it. His name is John Kowalski. And I nodded, put it on the table, and I slid it back over to him. I didn't say another word. Well, I must have stricken this from my memory, because 20 or 25 years go by. We're all taking a vacation Memorial Day weekend. We were playing poker, and Johnny looks up at me and says, you remember when we first met? And I said, yeah. I just remember that it was uncomfortable. Remember you told me about the DNR breeding a walleye, a coho, and a muskie? And I looked at him, and I had totally like I said, I strickened it from my memory. It was not in there. And I chuckled, and it all came running back. And I said, Johnny, I don't think I ever apologized for that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. And he started cracking up. And he said, dude, I've liked you ever since that came out of your mouth. And I said, seriously? I said, how did you keep a straight face? He said, we were biting the inside of our cheeks, just trying not to laugh. As soon as you and Renee left the restaurant, we were in tears. We were laughing so hard. And I think we agreed right then and there that you guys were definitely getting married, because anybody who can firmly put both feet in his mouth like that and stick around is definitely a keeper.